Hey there, thank you so much for joining me for another tutorial. My name is Erin Eno and spring is just around the corner, so today I'm going to show you how to paint 4 different spring blooms. So let's just jump in and get started. Before I start painting, I'll just run through my materials for you. Today I am using my Strathmore 500 series watercolor paper and I've got marks on it, but anyway, it's 140 pound, 100% cotton. I don't believe they state that you can paint on both sides of this, but this is actually the back side because I've got something on the other side. And these are just quick kind of illustration flowers, so I think it will be fine. I've got my Van Gogh paints in my palette, jar of water and a paper towel, and I have 3 brushes. I have my Curry's store brand in a size 10 in their 2500 series, size 10 round, and a size 6 round in their 2400 series, and I have my Princeton snap in a size 2 round. Okay, so we are going to start off by painting some crocuses, and I'm going to be painting them a nice bluish kind of purple. More purple than blue, actually. So I'm just using quinacridone purple and ultramarine deep. Okay, and I'm just going to start with kind of a medium wash, and their petals are kind of teardrop shaped. Okay, so we're just going to do one petal there. Whoops, do it like that. And then one petal to the right of that one. And then we're just going to let that dry. Okay, and they kind of come down like that, almost like a snowdrop shape. And I don't mean like, I mean it's the plant snowdrop. Okay, so there are 2 petals for our first crocus, and we'll do one over here. That's not as pigmented, but that's okay. So they're just teardrop, like I said. Maybe we'll have this one a little more open. Okay, we're not going to worry about petals at the back yet. And we'll do another one over here. We'll just do 3. We don't need to get carried away. Okay, just like that. They're a little far apart, but it's all good. You can even go in and just pick up some pigment to give them some shape, or add a little pigment to let that bleed. Or you can wait till it dries and go in and add some pigment later as a second layer if you want to do it that way. Totally up to you. So now I'm going to go into the green. I'm not worrying about shading too much, but I like to pick up some pigment and have some highlights. You know, they may not be true to the angle of the light source, but it just gives it a little something. These are just quick, so we're not fussing too much about the technicalities of the shading. Okay, so now I'm going to take the green and just do the stems. That stem's a little thick, but oh well. Okay, just like that. We're going to let that dry. Then I'm going to move on to the Lily of the Valley, which is white. And we can't paint white on white paper, so we've got to paint it a very pale gray, okay? There can be white areas, but there has to be some gray on there to distinguish the shape. So I'm just mixing up a light white. That's probably way too dark, but I will just not have it so heavy on my brush. But one thing I like to do when I'm doing Lily of the Valley is I like to draw the stem first, because that's going to establish where my little bells come out of, okay? So I'm just going to do the stem like so, and have it hang down, okay? So that is establishing where we're going to put our little bells. I'm actually going to have one facing us, so I'm just going to take a little section just like that where I don't want the stem to be, okay? And I think I will continue with my number 2 brush because it doesn't hold a lot of water or pigment. And we can just start painting in our little bell-shaped Lily of the Valley. And it's going to be very pale, so I apologize if you can't see it. Just like that. So I'm painting in an outline of it and putting a little more gray to the left side, but I'm leaving, hopefully you can see it, I'm leaving a little highlight there. Okay, and I'm going to continue to do that with all of them that I paint. Well, I don't want any excess water on there. So the little curls. And we can go back in and add even more shading. That might be a little dark. There. Once this dries, we can add more shading, like I was saying, but I don't want to do shading with bleeds because you don't have a lot of control over it. So I want to do it as a second layer and something that we can blend out. Okay, so I'll just continue on. This is where we want to do the one that's facing us. And it's kind of like a rounded kind of star with all these points. That's what it would look like. Okay, and I'm not going to shade this one too much. And I want to leave the inside white because we're going to put yellow stamens in there. And I won't do too many. We don't need to go nuts. Just enough to show that it's actually a lily of the valley. Maybe we'll do another one. Yeah, we'll keep them all on this side, but why not? That's a little heavy. I blot some of that one up. So I'm just going to make it look like there's another one kind of coming off that other side there. Okay. And then I'm going to put a couple of little green balls of unbloomed lily of the valley. So I'll put one here and put one right at the very end. That might be a little deep, so I'm just going to pick some of that up. I don't want them too strong a green. So now we have to let that dry. I think I will extend the stem just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to go back to our crocuses. And I'm going to take my number 6 brush back to that purple. Okay, and again, I'm going to use a wash, but it's going to be a little heavier this time. Don't mind my neighbor's dog. How many times have you heard me say that? Too many. And I'm just going to drag this down. I'm going to put some dark right at the very base of it. Okay, but I don't want to fill it all up with dark because I'm going to put a little stamen in this one. There. So I'm just adding some shading to kind of separate these petals. But I don't want to go crazy. And I think I will do just a light wash just for another petal back here. You can actually do them darker or lighter. I think I'll do them darker. So that's another petal at the back, and then I'm just going to do a line here to separate those two petals. I don't want to fuss too much. And then I will do, let's do a little petal back here, why not? I'm just going to rinse off my brush and drag this down. And just by layering it over that one, you get that that differentiates the other petal from it. And then I will pop one in the back, just a little darker. This could be a little bigger too. Okay, that's a little too dark. I'm going to lighten it up just towards the back, like so. Then I think this one, I think that might be dry enough that I can do the little stamen in the middle. Let me have a look and see. Just cross your fingers that this doesn't bleed. That's okay. We've got our yellow in there. I don't think I like this one being very dark though. I'm just gonna, there we go. That's better. It had gone kind of wonky. Then I'm gonna go back to our Lily of the Valley with my size 2. And we're going to go to the gray again, just a light wash. We're just going to add a little bit of shading to the one side of these little bells. Oops, it can be a little, maybe a little darker than that. So I'm going to blend it out. This one I'm not going to do too much with. Okay, so I'm going to rinse and dry off my brush. I did not mean to do that. Just kind of soften that shadow up. Just like that, and go into the yellow again. And just tap in the little stamen in the center of that one. Now I'm going to take my, stay with my number 2, and go back to that green. And this is where we're going to join. Actually, am I? They might be still a little wet. Well, let's see. So we're going to just curve this up and down to each little bell. And that's what's really key to the Lily of the Valley plant. This one just kind of, and then this one would be behind that front facing one and then come down. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry and then we'll do a big leaf behind it. But we can move on to back to the crocus. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to the crocus, get some green again, and a little bit of purple just to deepen it up. And we'll just do some leaves on the crocuses, and they're just skinny. So I'm just gonna go with the tip of my brush, light pressure, little heavier pressure, and then back up to light. Because they are skinny. You don't want to make big floppy leaves for a crocus. Let's do another one. So light pressure, a little heavier, and then back up to light pressure. Okay, pretty simple. We don't need to do too many. And then we're going to move on to our tulips. So I'm going to stay with my number 6 brush, and I'm going to go into my Azo Yellow medium. Okay, it's pretty bright. And we're just going to do petal to the left, okay, and a petal to the right, just in that little tulip shape. We're not fussing too much about these. Just a simple tulip shape. And we'll do another one over here. We can go in and add shading to separate those petals if you want as well. But we're going to spruce this up a bit by going into the carmine, which is very highly pigmented. So I only need a little bit. And just with the tip of my brush, I'm just going to run it along the bottom. Okay, and I'm holding my brush almost at a 90-degree angle, so I don't get a really thick bleed line. Okay, just a little bit. You could even just do some. That's too much. If you want it really variegated, variegated, is that the word? And if that doesn't bleed the way we want, we can go back in and kind of smush it around with some water. So we're just going to leave that as simple as it can be. And I'm going to go in and do the stems. I'm just going to use sap green again. And it's just going to come up to each of the 2 tulips. Like that. Okay, and then we're going to switch to our number 10 brush. And again, with primarily sap green, I'm not fussing too much. We're just going to do some tulip leaves. So just do long wavy leaves. Like that. And another one coming down like this maybe. Just play around. Because tulip leaves can be a little curly too, a little wavy on the edges if you want to add some waves in there. Okay, you can go back into the paint and just tap at the top, tap at the base, just to give it some shape and texture. And I can see those tulips aren't blending the way I would want, the way I want them to. So I'm going to go in with just a damp brush, and I'm just going to kind of encourage this to finish the bleed and soften up a bit. And then if you do want to add a line to separate those petals, we can do that once this is dry. But I'm trying not to overthink these petals and just let them do their thing. Keep them simple. So I'm just adding some of that quinacridone purple, or the purple we mixed up to that green, just to add some darkness to it. And we're just going to add some darker areas on these petals. not petals, leaves. I'm calling leaves petals and petals leaves. And I really don't like the way it was drying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with my number 6 brush. I've cleaned it off. It's just damp. And I'm just going to go pick up some areas just to give it some shape and waviness. See, they almost look like more dimensional now. And that's about it for that. I will go into the red now though and just do a little bit to separate those leaves. Petals, oh gosh, what is my problem? Okay, so that's it for your tulips. Now we have daffodils we're gonna do. So we're gonna do one that's perfectly, actually, you know what? No, we're gonna go and we're gonna finish the lily of the valley. So we're just gonna do a couple of leaves on our lily of the valley. And I'm gonna use the sap green again. And I'm going to add some ultramarine deep to make it a nice bluey green. Whoops. I'm trying to hurry because I didn't want to make a career out of these paintings. So the whole idea was to keep it simple. So what I do want to do though, is I want to at least touch one of these lily of the valley little bells where the leaf goes, just so it can kind of, you know, show the shape of at least one of the little bells, just for fun. Just like that. I've plopped water on my paper too. And lily of the valley leaves are quite wide. So you can come right out like that. And then just drag that pigment out away from your little bell. Okay? And you can always go in and add more green or lift out some pigment to get a highlight. And then here we'll just do another one, nice and wide. Get a little more water on my brush. Nice and wide like that. I don't want to hit another flower though, because I don't want to be doing that again. I just don't want to. And then what I will do here as well, you can see how I'm rushing. I keep dipping my hand in and slopping it on my paper. Look how dirty that water is. I hope that lifts off. Otherwise, I'm painting green background. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go in with a clean brush again and just pick up some highlights like we did on the tulip leaves, just to give it some movement and life. And then what I do want to do is, because I was so cautious about the gray, I'm just going to go in and darken up some of those little bells. Just a little bit. Don't worry, I'm gonna blend this out. But I just want to show the shape of the flowers just a little more. I was afraid to go too dark, but it's better to start off too light and then have to go back in like this than to just have it too dark right from the start. You don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to rinse and dry off my brush and just pick some of that pigment up and blend it out. And if it looks too heavy, just take the little smallest tip of your paper towel and kind of mop some of it up. Okay, that's better. They were almost non-existent before. They might be a little gray now, but at least you know they're there. And it should dry a little lighter as well. So there's our lily of the valley. You can go in, because it's drying lighter, you can go in and beef up that green on the leaf a bit. It's strictly for interest's sake. That's all. And then the last one we're going to do is a daffodil. 2 daffodils, actually. So I'm going to start with my number 6 brush again. We're going to do one that's a perfectly side view. Okay, and I'm going to use yellow ochre because it's got a little bit more tone to it than just the azo yellow medium. Okay, it's a little richer, but when you spread it out, when you water it down, it is still quite bright. So we're going to start with the side view and this little kind of trumpet shape. Then you're going to bring it down just like that. And then the other petals are going to be, well, some are going to be a straight side view like this. Then another one maybe out the back here. And we can separate these with shading as well. Okay, so these are all going to kind of, they may all blend into one another at the start, but we can separate them with some shading. Okay, and then the rest of the trumpet kind of part extends past there. Okay, so that's our first one. Pretty simple. Now our next one, we'll do more on an angle. Just get more paint there. And I'm going to start with the trumpet part first. And it's going to be like a little kind of mushed, misshapen circle. So that is like the rim of our trumpet, okay? Then the inside, we're just going to fill in, and not entirely. Okay, so just like that. And this will start, as we add shading to this, it will start to look like that kind of trumpet shape, okay? And then beside it, we're going to do, actually, you know what, we'll do the other side of the trumpet shape, but we're going to leave a little highlight there, okay? Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. That's a little crazy. Okay, and then we're going to do leaves, petals, petals, petals. And they're all going to blend in, but we're going to separate them with shading. So we're not going to worry about them blending into each other right now. Okay, so don't worry about that. Just draw or paint in your petals. And do one here. And one up here. Make this one a little bit bigger. Okay, so just like that. And maybe we'll do one up here. That's better. Okay, now while that's drying, we can go ahead and do the stems. I'm using a lot of green. It's getting used up very quickly. I don't know why. I want this to be a little still on the yellow side. Maybe a little yellower, so I will add some yellow ochre to it. So it's definitely a little yellower. And I'm just going to draw this stem up that's going to go kind of as if it's behind there. So it was going there and it would come out about here. Okay, so I'm just going to paint that up like that. I don't want to touch that because it's still wet. I don't really want that to bleed into there. And then this one will have, whoop, that's a little thick, come down like that. This one's fairly dry, so I can go in and do some shading. And I'm going to do the shading with burnt sienna, because it's a warmish kind of brown. See how it's kind of yellowy, orangey brown? And we're going to mix that in with the yellow ochre, and that's going to be the shading color that we're going to use for the daffodil. Now, I don't want it too watery. I don't want my brush soaking wet. Actually, you know what? I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. So we're going to go back to the number 2. And I'm just going to put some shading just under this lip here, okay? Don't go right to the edge because you're creating a lip with this shadow, okay? Then I'm going to dry off my brush, and I'm just going to drag some of that down, just like that. If you want to heavy it up a bit right under the very edge here, you can do that just to give it more depth. Okay, and then we're going to use that again to separate these petals. So there is a petal here, and that's going to cast a shadow on the underneath part. Okay, so I'm just going to blend that out and then add just a few lines to separate the petals. That's all we're doing. I don't want to fuss too much. Okay, so I'm just kind of dry brushing this. You blend it into the stem just a little better there. Okay, now we'll go to this guy. I think it's dry enough. Same thing, that burnt sienna with the yellow ochre. Okay, and not too much water on my brush. Actually, I'm going to go in with straight burnt sienna first and do the little stamens on the inside here, just like that. Okay, then I'll go to the mixture of the yellow ochre and the burnt sienna, and we'll start doing some shading. So we want to form this kind of trumpet edge, so we're going to do the same thing. Just tap some paint in there. I'm going to clean off my brush and just kind of dry brush that shadow in there. Okay, and you just bring it just to that edge, and it starts to make that kind of cylinder shape. So under here, you're going to do the same thing, and you're going to keep that edge, that highlight edge right here. Okay. I maybe didn't do such a great job there, but I think you get the idea. And then we're just going to start separating these petals. So whichever ones you want underneath, those are the ones that you're just going to do this little curve of a shadow on. Okay, so this one would be underneath this one. This would have a little bit of a shadow cast from the trumpet shape. Then I'm going to draw off my brush and just kind of blend that out a bit. Actually, going to pick a little highlight up there. I don't know what happened there, but it's got a white hole in it here. Don't think I meant to do that, but because it's not holding that kind of trumpet shape, but still looks like a daffodil. I think it's all good to me. I'm going to go in with some Azo Yellow medium, actually, because it is, the yellow's getting a little dull. There we go. It might be dull because my water's so filthy, but there, that just kind of brightens it up a bit. And the daffodil leaves are tall, are long and skinny as well. So I'm just going to go light pressure, a little bit heavier, and just up to that flower. I don't want to make a mess of it. This one we will see if we can go past it and not screw it up. Yeah, not bad. Maybe another one out here. I'm gonna pick some of this up, it's a little dark. And then we'll do another one. Just going out this way, but not ruining our plant, our leaf there, petal. Okay, so there you go. There are 4 watercolor spring flowers. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful, and maybe you'll give one or all of these a go. Thanks again so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.